If you're like me, you're sick and tired of altcoins going sideways at best and down in most cases, but I believe we are in for the literal biggest alt season we have ever experienced by a long shot, and I think it's coming. Now, I'm almost certain, but there are some very important things that have to happen before that occurs. Actually, 3 conditions. I need you guys to know what each of these 3 things are, because they all have to happen at the same time to cause alt season. So by knowing this, you won't have to worry so much about, hey, is this alt season? Is this alt season when altcoins pump up 2 or 3% on the week, okay? You're going to know because these 3 things will very evidently be in our favor. Let's begin. Now it's like, Kyron, why the hell do we give a crap about Bitcoin when our altcoins are down? Well, as you'll soon see, some of these conditions rely on Bitcoin. People have this idea in their head that if Bitcoin goes up, alts will not go up. But guys, Bitcoin has to go up because Bitcoin almost has to be kind of like an icebreaker. All right, it's like the Titanic, well, that's probably a bad example. It's like a ship breaking through the ice, making way for other ships to be able to pass through that channel. Without that icebreaker ship, we don't have any of the other ships being able to make a passage through, let's just say, Antarctica. So what I don't want you guys to be in the position of is a situation like the tweet behind me, where a guy said, okay, I need price to go up. I can't take this anymore. Every day I'm checking price and it's dipping. Every day I check price, bad price. I can't take this anymore. And so on and so forth. Now, if you're in this state of mind, first of all, I made a video a few days ago helping you and ideally being able to reduce your worries based on math, based on just analyzing the market and looking to take less money off the table in this bull run and look to maximize the next bull run. But again, I'm just sort of pointing this out to you guys because I think patience is going to be rewarded very, very heavily here. First of all, if you have a look at the chart behind me, okay, I think this tells much more of a story than what most people are looking at right now. Most people are looking at this chart, which is Bitcoin's dominance, and saying, well, we just need this thing to go down. That's all we're waiting for. And that's very, very true. But Ethereum's chart, I think, tells us a much more clear story, which is, I think we've possibly been waiting for Ethereum to bottom here more than we're waiting for Bitcoin to top. It's just a theory of mine, but I think it makes a lot of sense because Ethereum has only recently bottomed. And why that's important is because it took about the same amount of time for Ethereum to bottom from the previous cycle back here in 2018 as it did at the conclusion of kind of like over here in May. So this massive drop off here was kind of the same time frame that it took to drop off back over here. And then you can see bottom. Now, you can see this massive chop over here. This massive chop, okay, lasted for a very long time. The end of the last bull run was actually way over here. So Ethereum was moving sideways for some reason for literally since December of 2021 to July of 2023, which is about over a year and a half. So that is the reason why I think it's taken so long and why Bitcoin's dominance is now moving up at the degree it is, because down here, Ethereum was in a stronger position. Okay, so as Ben Cohen would say, Ethereum is finally home. It's reached this bottom zone down here, and it's playing a very similar pattern you can see here as it did back somewhat over here, okay, which means we might have more to the downside, might. Okay, but what that means is ultimately Ethereum is playing to the same pattern it was back over here and all throughout here. The issue was it just took a year and a half before it started to drop. So if this is true, we may see Bitcoin go up a little further from here and then begin to fall down, which of course will be alt season. That's just how it's gone for the longest time. And I think this chart here getting Bitcoin's dominance in orange, Ethereum's dominance here in purple, and altcoins, excluding the top 10 cryptocurrencies here in blue. And again, the same pattern you can see is playing out as it did over here. As it is here, it's just taken a lot longer because for some reason we were all in limbo for about a year and a half. So that was one of my recent findings today, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, the pattern's playing out. We just stalled out there for a year and a half for whatever reason. And I'm going to get into these 3 conditions here in just one moment, but to give you some more context as to why I'm bullish on alt season happening, and just to give you guys some idea on kind of what's happening in the market today, I want to point out ETFs. ETFs amongst the chaos retail is experiencing as as crazy as it does sound, Bitcoin kind of like floating around $100,000 here. It's crazy. If you told me Bitcoin was sitting at $100,000 and everyone was freaking out back over here, I'd say, take my money. But I get it. It's because altcoins are suffering much more than Bitcoin. But anyway, the ETFs are seeing a lot of inflows, which tells me, again, amongst many other things, that, the guys who are institutional investors who previously didn't want to get into crypto, but now because of the ETFs, they can and want to. It's almost like a stamp of approval, if you will. Well, they're buying, okay? So the ETFs, you can see here for Bitcoin, in the last week, we've had 2.2% of the current market cap as overall net inflows in just 1 week. ETH saw some pretty good inflows as well at 1.29% of its market cap over the last week as well. And if we just have a look at how fast these guys are accumulating, literally at record highs, at record speeds, just look at the rate of this. It's exponential. You got to ask yourself why. Why is this? Again, this chart I showed you guys a few videos ago is looking at long-term holders and their impact on the inflation rate. Okay, the inflation rate here being essentially the miner reward for mining the blocks in the Bitcoin network. Now, long-term holders, when this goes down, that means they're buying up the supply. They're removing from the so-called inflation or sending tokens into the market, okay? Now, we haven't been back down at this level since all the way over here in 2022. We were recently around these levels here in 2023, but we've now dipped even lower. And you can see long-term holders, when this goes up, they're selling. And they got no problem selling when everyone's bullish, okay? So again, follow the smart money, in my personal opinion, non-financial advice. You can also see this gray line going down here. This is the liquidity inventory or total sell side pressure. When this goes down, that means possible sell side pressure from ETFs, from institutions via the OTC desks, from anything that's sort of possibly, even ETFs and exchanges, possibly floating around. It's drying up. And right now we're at levels we saw back here in about 2018, which is honestly kind of mind-boggling. Now, I want to briefly talk a little bit about altcoins and when we can expect alt season to happen just in general, okay? Because altcoins, in my personal opinion, are nothing more than, in the eyes of a regular person, by the way, me and you see these things as true game changers and, can actually change the course of history, at least some of them. But the average person sees these as like just generalized meme coins, okay? Just a complete gamble fiesta. It's kind of the community we've fostered anyway, unfortunately. So the average investor, of course, invests in likely stocks, which is probably further around here. They likely invest in mutual funds. They invest in sort of these things that are very slow movers, but are very true, tried and tested. Of course, the average person maybe buys penny stocks to be a bit, speculative, but, altcoins are way down the very end here. Altcoins are literally at the very end of the risk curve, meaning it's until people have excess capital in their back pocket that they're willing to go ahead and throw that into altcoins. We could almost replace the word altcoins with literally casino, So this is the way I want you to think about it. Okay, whether you love altcoins for the tech or whether you're just here to make some money, that's the way I would put it, to give you guys some expectation on when we can expect this to actually play off here. So looking into things like the global business cycle is very, very important. The global liquidity cycle as well. So we track this, of course, in the private community. These tools will be available in there very, very shortly. But essentially, the global business cycle here is looking at how businesses are performing in an economy. And what I track here on this blue line is the global business cycle. So pretty much a whole bunch of the top economies around the world. And if businesses are making a bunch of money, that means people are spending a bunch of money, likely on pointless crap, to be honest with you, which means they're more likely to put money in the casino. What they're not likely to do is put money in the casino if they can barely afford rent and food. Okay, that's why this is actually going down, or has been going down. One promising sign is global liquidity. Now, this usually front runs the global business cycle because when you have more money sloshing around the world, that usually means it's in someone's hands, right? And so that, of course, means that it's likely going to end up boosting the business cycle. So in this case, when you can see here, this line is coming up to this sort of previous level of resistance, that's a good thing. So I'm eyeing this off because you can see over here and over here, the high came over here first. Same with over here and over here. We usually see a reversal happen in global liquidity first of all. Now, in addition to that, alt season will most definitely come, I believe anyway, when we see this chart here break out to the upside. This is looking at others versus Bitcoin and their dominance. So it's our favorite altcoins versus Bitcoin, okay, and their dominance in the market. Now, there is a very similar pattern that is playing out right now in this descending wedge, which happened over here right before the 2017 bull run and happened right before the 2021 bull run over here. And that is, of course, a very bullish sign. Okay, so I'm waiting for this to break out. The latest we can expect this is around August to September, and I spoke about this in one of my more recent videos. Like I said, in addition to global liquidity and the business cycle, like you want to be observing things like interest rates as well, particularly eyes on the US. You know, there are some economies reducing their interest rates right now. We've got good news. Switzerland put theirs down to nada, zero, which is fantastic. I do see a silver lining here. I do see, green skies ahead. But like I said, many, many months ago, we're likely going to have to go through the eyes of a storm first of all, which we have been through, okay? So it might get a little worse, but again, I'm still optimistic and not pessimistic. Now, deciding on what altcoins to buy, I think, guys, look, we have to use data. In my opinion, the best hands down data we can use to assess whether an altcoin is doing good or kind of shit is essentially, excuse the French, is looking at dominance. Okay, how well is it doing versus the market? So we assess this here in the bull run cheat sheet. So bull run performance versus the market, yearly performance versus the market, okay, since January 1st. We also want to look here at yearly performance versus other altcoins. So how is an altcoin doing versus other altcoins since January, which is right around here. Okay, if it's outperforming altcoins, it's other altcoins, then it's doing quite good. And also, at the very end here, I think the most important, lows to now versus altcoins. Okay, so which pretty much just means lows here in April to now versus other altcoins. Okay, so if an altcoin is actually from here to here, okay, where we've seen a growth in the market cap, actually doing worse, that tells you something very important. That tells you that the altcoin is underperforming the market or other altcoins, which means that it's likely doing that because of a very bad reason, or at least it could lead to that. So what we do here is have a heat map, total average, and we just figure out which altcoins are the clear winners. You can see here, Aerodrome Finance is one of them, Flare is another one of them, and it just goes on. Okay, so again, this is all available in the private community for you guys to access, plus a whole bunch more. So finally here, let's break down the three conditions. First of all, condition one, BTC must break trend. This chart here, okay, shows every single alt season, and when Bitcoin breaks out of these little white zones here, these are what I call the bull run ascending channels. You can see breaks here. What happens? All right, we have alt season. Why do I know that? Because Bitcoin's dominance breaks down, okay? So we come over here, breaks the trend, Bitcoin dominance falls down. Okay, that causes alt season. Same with over here in 2021. Breaks this, Bitcoin's dominance falls down. Of course, that causes alt season. The same thing over here. So we're waiting for Bitcoin to break this upper trend, which will signal, I think, to many people, Bitcoin is breaking out. It is time to buy. And I think with all of the adoption we've seen over the last few years, plus all of the insane things I'm about to tell you regarding stable coins, I don't see why we don't break out of that channel. Now, it might take a little longer than normal, okay? But that's all a part of the Bitcoin cycle. Things get longer. They don't get shorter, guys. And right now, we're on track with being pretty much on par, as you can see here, with about the 2017 cycle, which is around 1,253 days from the breakout. So we're just a bit over that right now. So it is to be expected, at least in my personal opinion. Now, again, this here is the stablecoin supply ratio oscillator. What this means is when this goes down, stablecoins versus Bitcoin have enough strength, have enough momentum in the tank to be able to send Bitcoin higher. If this thing is up, that means that we've pretty much spent all of our stablecoin market cap pushing Bitcoin up. We don't have any more fuel in the tank, and it's likely to have a reversal. So that's why I'm looking at this right now being nice and neutral at 50 as a very, very good thing, okay? Because that means now we've reset and we likely can push up if and when it is necessary, as well as the sell side risk. So all this looks at is just if people are in profit or not. If this is down, chances are Bitcoin's at a good buy opportunity. If this is up, chances are Bitcoin's going to have a reversal. So all I'm trying to point out here is we're in a good spot to continue going higher. Whether the macro allows us to or not is a different story. But again, Bitcoin wants to remain in this uptrend as the 50-day moving average has kind of helped prove to us in the situation. That's condition one. When that hits, it'll be very obvious. condition 2 will likely be met hopefully at that time as well, which is ETH breaks all-time highs as well as others. Now, this wasn't actually something I thought of myself. I want to give a very, very big shout out to Black Widow BTC on Twitter. I'll leave her Twitter down below. Please go follow her. She's one of the very few people I actually follow myself. She follows a very similar frame of mind and mindset regarding the market as I do. Okay, it's not an echo chamber. I can just see that she looks at things based on data, okay, doesn't let her emotions get involved with things, and so she actually gave me the idea to make this video and put my thoughts together. So please give her a follow if you want to keep up to date with trends. So I didn't think of this before, all right? Obviously, I knew about the trend, the Bitcoin breaking out of the channel before. I knew about what I'm going to share next as well, but I didn't even think of this. So full credit to her. So this is Ethereum's price chart behind me, and if I toggle Bitcoin's dominance, you damn well bet when it breaks the previous high, dominance literally falls exactly on that moment, okay, over here, okay? Bitcoin dominance actually falls. So what we're waiting for is literally Ethereum to hit all-time highs, and it's as simple as that. I could not believe this and how I overlooked it for all this time. So it's actually a good thing in my opinion. We did not break highs over here. Okay, we're over here at about $5,000 almost. Okay, so when this does happen, keep a very, very good eye on around $4,900 because that is going to be, I think, our big chance, and we'll likely break straight through sort of this line of resistance here at around $4,000. And once we do that, I think it's all guns blazing from there. Others also share a very similar thing as well. If I toggle Bitcoin's dominance, again, you can kind of see it happens. It happens a little bit later than Ethereum's dominance, but of course, not by long, okay? Ethereum always front runs altcoins. And again, it's a very good thing in this case. We haven't broken all-time highs. And I actually almost think between these two charts, that's probably for a reason. I think these market makers know when this happens, it's going to go to the limit, right? Sky's the limit. And lastly, you may have guessed it, Bitcoin dominance falls. But Bitcoin dominance, I believe, will fall as a consequence of condition 1 and 2. I think we'll just see it evidently fall at that point in time. So that excludes, of course, macro. We have to have macro conditions in our favor. You know, we won't pump unless, we won't pump in complete QT. We won't pump when interest rates are sky high and when the business cycle and liquidity cycle aren't moving forward. Now, the good news is global M2 is still going up and it looks like we are due for a reversal. But again, anything's possible. The world's an absolute freak show right now. So I think crossing your fingers wouldn't be a bad idea, but I am still much more optimistic than pessimistic. One thing I want to add to this is the fact that we've had so much adoption in crypto. Like I said before, okay, we've had mass adoption over the last few years. But the Genius stablecoin bill just passed the Senate, okay? Up next is the House, then Trump is going to sign. And why this is so important is because we are seeing in real time institutions, payment providers, banks, and governments adopt stablecoins. I'll let you guys screenshot any of these right now. These are from my Twitter account, okay? I like to keep all this up to date as it comes through. This is real, okay? We're seeing insane adoption, and of course, what that's going to mean is we're going to have a continuation, a much faster and accelerated push in stablecoins. Now, what stablecoins fundamentally do here is push money into crypto. It's crypto's global M2, okay, particularly for altcoins. And right now, this is stablecoins market cap. You can just see the insane correlation it has here with this blue line. The blue line here is the total market cap. So this includes Bitcoin, Ethereum, like all the crypto is this blue line. So again, you can see when stablecoins dip, all right, this dips. So it pretty much uses it as a trend, as you would with global M2. Looking at Bitcoin specifically as well, it also follows the exact same pattern as stablecoins. And again, stablecoins are continuously going up. You can see others chart here does follow it as well. But of course, right now it's more choppy. It's very large chops. And I believe, again, that's because we have to wait for a few more conditions. Right now, most of the stablecoin money is flowing into Bitcoin, and that makes sense. Bitcoin is the least risky thing in a world and in macro conditions right now as things are just simply risky. People will hedge into Bitcoin, as I explained before with the risk curve. Alliance Bernstein, a massive VC that's involved with crypto, has even said that Ethereum's recent rally was fueled by stablecoin dominance, predominantly. Now, what does this mean? Access to stablecoins via governments, institutions, okay, everything I mentioned above is going to simply mean it's going to be much easier to access and buy altcoins. In 2017, it was very hard to buy altcoins, okay? I wasn't around back then, but I heard from many people. You ask anyone around back then, it was much harder to bring money and buy cryptocurrencies. In 2021, I lived through this, of course. more options, but it was still definitely challenging for beginners to bring money in and, of course, use it much more streamlined. Whereas now it is streamlined, it's available in apps, limited restrictions, and again, governments are adopting it. So I urge you to consider this in amongst everything else I've just mentioned in this video, okay? Keep things on the side, all right? Be prepared, touch grass, get out, live life a little bit. I think patience will be rewarded here. Okay, so maybe it's not. Like in the worst case, let's say that things all go to absolute crap down the drain, okay? Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but hypothetically, I want you to think about this for your own sake. Is the money you have in the market right now, if it does go to zero, can you continue living life? If not, consider, not financially, of course, offloading some of that capital to where the money you have in the market, you're okay to lose. Because the way I think of it is, again, as a casino, if you went to a roulette table and you spun that roulette board, okay, and there was a 25% chance of landing on zero, which means you make nothing, okay, but there was a 75% chance you 20x'd. I think all of us here would probably be on that table first thing, okay? That's kind of how I see crypto right now. You just have to approach it with very careful risk so you're not overexposed if it does land on zero. So guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. For all of you absolute legends that made it this bloody far through my complete and utter word spam, I'd love if you hit a like down below. And also for today's emoji, I never think about this before I actually make these videos. I'm going to think, let's do the strong emoji, okay? Because we're staying strong. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.